Shalom, everybody. This is Dion Talley, servant of the Most High Yahuwah, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Deep Revelation series. And this one's going to be a little different because I'm going to get off of my normal studies, and we're going to get into something that's been really bothering me. And I've been really coming after this thing for years, since it's reared its ugly head. And that is this notion that we are the Aboriginal Native Americans of America, which is such a shameful theory because of how it defames. It actually sort of attempts to nullify the suffering of our forefathers in their trip in the hulls of those ships from Africa to America. And to me, that's probably the most disturbing of all of this, is because they're saying that a lot of these things are lies, and they're saying that the slave trade and the history thereof is all fabricated, and all of this stuff is made up, and Esau, and he was primarily mixed breed, the Indians that are, and you can see those here in this picture here. These are the supposed black Indians. And it's insane because, number one, how could they be Indians when these are photos? These people are circulating photos around the internet. And in 1619, when we were coming over here, there weren't no cameras. There wasn't none of this photography then. I don't understand that. That's madness. But anyway, we're going to get into some deep things because we're going to prove it once and for all. And we're going to assert that, number one, if you claiming that you're Hebrew, because a lot of these so-called Hebrews, by the names that they call themselves, are trying to associate this harebrained theory with it. And I can't understand that. That's oil and water. It's two different nations, two different breeds of people, two different ethnicities, two different nations, two different peoples. How can they even fathom thinking that these are two different people? And we're going to start primarily by proving that by going to something I saved on my desktop. And this is the ancient picture, and you can tell by the style that this is found in Egypt. And the sons of Japheth, these are sons of Noah. So it tells you the Egyptians were on point when it came to their studies in reality of the distinguishment of the children of Noah. But look at the photos. Let's expand this out a little bit. See? He's got beards. These men got beards. These are, and forget the skin color, because we already know that they settled from the book of Jasher that tells you that the children of Japheth settled in the north. So they're going to have pigmentation, and they're not going to have melanin in their skin. For additional reasons as well, but in terms of climate and adaptation to that climate, their bodies didn't require the melanin that the children of Ham required in the climate that they lived in. I mean, that's just common sense. And Shemites, we had a blend of both warm and cold. Or both hot and cold, rather. We had a warm climate. Let me get that straight. And we know that from the book of Jubilees, where the children of Noah were given their allotment of land. But let's continue. We're going to get into some other issues here, because I've always believed that, number one, we'll go to the scriptures first, and we'll go to 15. We'll go to Genesis 15 again, where we have the 400-year prophecy. And we've read this many times if you haven't. This is the heart and soul of the belief and foundation of what Hebrews stand on here in Babylon in America. And that's know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs. See that? Not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom I will serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And my previous video, we established that the 430 years applied to the Egyptian sojourning and hard labor. It's not the same as the 400 years total, that is, affliction. Meaning that you afflicted your whole duration of your stay here in America, or wherever this was inferring that they were going to be staying. And we all know that to be America. But my point of this, in the context of our discussion, these are the Canaanites. And we're going to look at their children of Canaan. Right? And it'll tell you, the table of nations, we're going to go to the children of his children. And they said the children of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan. And we're going to go down to Canaan's sons. Okay? And there we go. And it says, now Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, the Arvadite, the Zimmerite, and the Hamathite. And afterward were these families of the Canaanites spread abroad. See, people forget that the Canaanites are a nomadic people. This is where we get that notion of people being a nomadic people. People who travel all the time. People who can't stay in one place for a long time. And this comes from the root of his name, Cain. This is from the curse that was placed upon Cain, this, a forefather of Noah. And the Canaanites were traveling all the time. They were always migrating, always moving and traveling. And they were nomadic. They could, like where we get the term nomads. And so this is another distinction between us and their people. Hebrews aren't a nomadic people. You can tell that from the hoods. I mean, the ghettos. I mean, some of these people are 5 and 6 generations in these ghettos. I would say 5, but at least 4 generations in there. And there's no way that fits our description. Well, anyway, what we're going to focus on to prove that these people are 2 different people, because Shemites are Shemites, and those who are children of Shem, and the children of Canaan are the children of Ham, who was Shem's brother. So we're going to focus on this particular, where was it? I just lost my place here. I wanted to find, there we go, the Amorite. That's what we want to look at. And when we look at Amorite, I want the listener here to keep in mind America and the notion of America being discovered by a man named Amerigo Vespucci. And we're going to dispel that immediately. Okay, but let's get to that. I'm going to change directions real quick, folks. And so we're going to go to where I believe is probably the most overlooked portion of this thing, is that if all of the earth came from one person or one family, then Africa and Asia and the Americas are in different hemispheres, sometimes or separated by water, large bodies of water. So how are we to believe this assertion that the Native Americans were here and they were always here when the cradle of civilization is in Mesopotamia? Let's go to the cradle of where Shem's land, and Shem was given as an allotment to his children. Okay, now look at this. This is the land of Mesopotamia. All of this is Northeast Africa because of the tectonic plates. Everybody knows that. This is starting to come out and emerge from the crevices of time itself. But Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization in terms of archaeology and the artifacts and the different kinds of things that they use to find evidences of antiquity. And this is proven and accepted by scientists and archaeologists and historians all around the world. Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization. Now, with that in mind, how did they get to the Americas? And it tells you here, even though this is crazy because the Most High said it's like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. So, in terms of the flood and the earth and the changes that were made after the flood, and the Great Deluge is called, all of the instrumentation we have to determine, in terms of specificity, what things are dated and how old things are, all of that has been disrupted and unreliable because the flood and the atmosphere on the earth before the flood and the lifespan of the things on the earth and the way that the atmosphere was able to sustain giants and dinosaurs, all of that changed. The Most High changed the ecology and the atmosphere and everything of the earth. Scriptures say that it didn't even rain before the flood. So there's no way that this could be 200,000 years old. But moving on, it tells you, as in agreement with all of the other theories that archaeology proves, even though they can't determine how old it is, that the cradle of civilization starts here. But they're even more accurate because they're saying it starts in Africa. And they migrated all the way out. See? See where all the arrows are pointing? They migrated all the way out. So the Americas, they're saying that they came up through North America, Canada, coming over to Russia, or I'm sorry, coming through Russia and then coming down from Canada, Alaska to be exact, then through Canada to the Americas. And that's the travel of land. My theory is that they're the Phoenicians, a seafaring people. People who, nomadic as well, still Canaanites, but traveled through the boats. And they made those trips from the islands And I think that they used these islands, Hawaii and all of that, and that's how they got over here. But this right here proves that there is no such thing as Native Americans in that respect. Even the Native Indians. All right? So forget that. That's nonsense. But next we're going to prove the fact that look at these. Going back to the picture of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Let me go back to my picture. Going back to the picture of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Notice the children of Ham don't have beards. Right? They don't have beards. Now look at these. No beards. Ooh. How do they overcome that? That's a oops right there, we call that. That's a oops. Hebrews don't have hair like that. I don't know any black people that have hair like that. If they do, they're mixed. Just like these folks are. There may be Indians. Like I said, there's pictures of these guys. So that tells you right there, this is hundreds of years after the fact. So this is nothing to even discuss, in my opinion. Hundreds of years after the fact. See that? No beards. None of them. None of them have beards. All of the women got that straight, long black hair. Which may be pretty and, I ain't saying anything about it. But, yeah. And this is the one guy that he seems to have a goatee. But he's mixed too. This is London. Okay, he's from Florida. That's a whole nother issue. At any rate, you can see none of these men have beards. So this is not something that we can even discuss because, the reality of appearance don't lie. All right? And we're going to prove also that they're families to the Canaanites because the Chinese don't have beards. Right? We're going to show the Chinese don't have beards either. Right? Chinese and Japanese, right? Let's look at Chinese. Okay. All their men don't have beards. None of their men have beards. Okay, let's see if they have any more. We can look at more men. Black. Okay, we can go with black Chinese. Huh? Traditional Chinese history says that was able to defeat the strong black China, the Mongols. Okay, so if we're going to look at the color, and this is something that we all need to keep in our minds. If we look at the color, if we all migrated from Africa, wouldn't we all be black anyway? But these are the characteristics that distinguish us. The beards. All right, now we're going to go back to that passage and we're going to prove this. And number one, the Amorites. Okay? And then let's look at what the Amorite means. The Amorite, okay? Great latitude to certify the challenge, okay? So, kind of giving you of their characteristics, but they're called Amar or the Emori, right? To say, to boast self, to call, to certify, to challenge, to charge. A mountaineer Emorite of the Canaanitish tribes. Okay? So now we're going to look at what those early Indians really called America. Got it wrong, but they knew what I mean. Okay. Nope, I'm not getting in there. Okay. Man. Morica. I was spelling it wrong, folks. Well, you know I had the rights of it. American names derived from the Incan Amorica. Uh-oh. We got to throw these advertisements up here, but you know what I mean here. Okay. America's name derives from the Incan Amaruca, from the Inca Aztecs. The tradition of the dragon and the sun is echoed in every part of the world. There was a time when 4 parts of the world were covered with the temples sacred to the sun and the dragon. But the cult is now preserved mostly in China and Buddhist countries. The dragon, however, is not the Middle Age concept of a beast with wings and breathing fire, but it is in reality a snake. Welcome to America, the land of the serpent gods. Okay, so let me go back in there because I had more. They're telling you where it comes from in recent Peru and South America. Let's go back. What do you call that? More? Okay. Okay. Amaruca. I put it in there, right? But anyway, let's see. This is an off the cuff study here. I'm doing it with you folks. Amaru. Okay. All right. Amaru mythology. Okay, the mythology of. Okay, they always got to throw their little pass their plate around. Time pay you on Tuesday. Anyway, in mythology, the Andean, that's South America, the Amaru, and the Amaru, Qatari Amaru is a mythical serpent or dragon, most associated with the Tiwanaku and Inca empires. In Inca mythology, the Amaru is a huge double-headed serpent that dwells underground, illustrated with heads of a bird and pumas. Amarus can be seen emerging from the central element in the center of a step mountain of a pyramid motif and gateway of the sun. Wow, you see that? Now let's go back to, now what did we say about Amaru? Amar? To say? Huh? Now let's go back to here and you're seeing where he's saying to say. Now that's what the dragon does. Think of politics and dragon and speaking and how what you say determines the higher you go in your stature you can attain. Think about that. This is a legendary creature appears in. This is what Indians fashion their culture after. This is why you see the bird headdress. This is why you see the bird headdress. We're going to go back to that. So we can go to images and see the Indian chiefs. See? See them all but the bird heads. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So now we're getting to it. Now we understand that these are Canaanites. No beards. He has the red tint. So that gives you more of an Edomite situation there. But I digress. But, I mean, this is without debate. This is without debate. And I'm going to show you where they got it from spiritually, where you get a spiritual glimpse of it. Let's look at Enoch. And this is a book that most people don't really teach from. But I go to it. Secrets of Enoch. Right? Okay. Now, check this out. Okay, now look, he talks about what he's seen here, Enoch, when he was visiting the heavens. The angels came and took Enoch. If you've ever read any of the history of Enoch, he was carried up, and the Most High showed him all of the heavens and all of creation and all of the angels, and showed that they were living creatures. And I looked and I saw other flying elements of the sun, whose names are the phoenixes and the calcatry. Ooh, okay. And what did they just tell you about them in the sun and the dragon? Okay. This is why the headdress. The plumed serpent. This is what they were dressing up as, the Phoenicians and the Indians. It's amazing. It's amazing. He says that then the elements of the sun, called the phoenixes and the calcatry, broke into song. Therefore every bird flutters with its wings, rejoicing at a giver of light. And they broke into song at the command of Yahweh. I don't use the Lord thing. I know that they didn't change the texture, the scriptures, or the text. They just changed the names. People need to remember that. He said the giver of light comes into the brightness to give brightness to the whole world, and the morning guard takes shape, which is the rays of the sun, and the sun of the earth goes out and receives its brightness to light up the whole face of the earth. And they showed me this calculation of the sun's going. And this is the thing that separates them from the rest of the world, is that their connection to the spiritual side. They worship these elements, the sun and the moon and the tide, high tide, very in touch with nature, these folks, because of Enoch tells you that these people, and we know that they're not our people because we can go into the law. The law tells us. Any graven images, right? Right? There is no graven images. Let me find out. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's look for where he says that anything of the heavens, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at all of the things of the heavens that he told us that we weren't supposed to. Got to be specific with them. Got to be specific with them. The S throws everything off with this puppy. All right, now let's look at this real quick, and then we're going to close out. He says, "And thou shalt not make any graven images or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water underneath the earth, and thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." Okay? Let's go back there, because this is reiterated all over the scriptures. Okay? Let's see. That's in the law. This is the law. He's telling you straight up that you are not going to have anything, you worship anything that's in the heavens. Let's move on, because that's going to waste time. But you got the gist of it. He tells you straight up. We can go back to it just to refresh your memory, the one that we can find. All right. Exodus 20. Exodus 20. He said, "Out of the house of bondage. He brought us out of the house of bondage, and you shall have no other gods before me." This is what separates us from the images, the idols, what they worship. That's what separates them from it. Okay. And now we're going to prove, like I said, I showed you the Chinese earlier. Right? The Chinese, well, he showed you here in Genesis 10. Let's go back to Genesis 10. Well, he says here in Genesis 10, he says the Archite and the Sinite. Right? Now let's find out who the Sinite is. We found out America. Those are the Amorites here that we chased out and killed. Chased them out of Jerusalem and chased them out of here too. Well, the Gentiles chased them out, needless to say. But at any rate, the Sinites. Everybody think that Moabites and the Arabs and confusing everything. We're going to find out who the Sinite is now. Right? And the Sinite is, right? He says, and otherwise known in the name of a man, a Sinite, a descendant of one of the sons of Canaan, right? Okay. Now we're gonna find out something that most people have never seen in their life. Most people have never seen this. Let's look at the context. Alright. So for the context, let's read the top of the chapter. I always like to find out. "Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, my people, from far. Yahweh hath called me from the womb, and my bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name." He's talking about Isaiah. This is deep. Anyway, we're going to skip down to where he's talking about bringing us from all over the world. All right? He says, thus saith Yahweh, in the acceptable time I have heard thee, and in the day of salvation have I helped thee, and I will preserve thee and give thee for a covenant of the people to establish the earth, to cause to inherit the desolate heritages. That thou mayest say to the prisoners, go forth to them that are in darkness, show yourself, and they shall feed in thy ways, in thy pastures, and all thy high places. They shall not hunger nor thirst, and neither shall the heat nor sun smite them, for he hath mercy on them. He that hath mercy on them shall lead them. Even by the springs of water shall he guide them. He's talking about our deliverance here. Let's move on. He said, and I will make all my mountains a way, and all my highways shall be exalted. And he says, behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Now let's find out what that is. Sinim, right? I lost my place here. Okay, Sinim, right? He says a distant oriental region. We know if anything oriental, that means Chinese, the Orient. Now let's prove that in Scripture. I'm going to go to which corner? Well, we'll go to Wikipedia since we're in here already. Sino generally refers to China, the ancient to modern history of China, the culture of China, or the Chinese people. So people need to stop that. You need to study, get your mental and your biblical aptitude, get your mental weight up, so to speak, because this is tripping. Anyway, I think I've gone over my time. But the sinners beneath, this was something that we need to keep in mind. That all of these people that we think of our friends or our brethren, or particularly from that 12 tribe chart, poppycock, as they say. I would punt it across the street like a football. That's how useless that is. Like they say, useless as screen doors on a submarine. There's just no purpose for it. It should be discarded like trash. As well as this notion here, because as Messiah said, you know what you worship, you know not what you worship, or you worship what you know not what. So there you go. And I'm going to cut my time right here, folks, and thanks for listening. And I'll see you next time on Deep Revelations. And you have a great Shabbat. And I look forward to hearing from you next time. Thank you. Shalom.